Sip some water because I know it is hot. Woo! So, have you enjoyed Old Home Day? It's great, isn't it? You know, there are more activities to follow at Drake Field after this. So please, go on over, enjoy yours. Not Drake Field, by the pond. The town pool. How many years have I lived here? By the town pool. You know, it's really great.
Forest B. Aggie Pool.
What?
Forest B. Aggie Recreation Area.
Whatever he said.
And then later on, there's music and fireworks. Now, Old Home Day used to be Old Home Week. And it was a great celebration. In 1901, Old Home Week celebrated the opening of the Hosea Carpenter Library.
Oh, thank you.
In 2004, it was the dedication of the Brigadier General Harrison Thing Memorial over by the cemetery. In 2011, they dedicated the expansion of the Tilton Hill ball fields. Now, 2022 is the dedication of the new Pittsfield Historical Museum. So let the festivities begin. First, I'd like to introduce Larry Berkson. Larry grew up in Pittsfield, and whose heart has never left Pittsfield. He is our next speaker. He's Pittsfield historian, and he's a font of information about Pittsfield. He's given his time and talents to resurrect this historical society. He also established or spearheaded the establishment of Lyman Park, where the viewing stand was earlier today. And you've seen these blue signs throughout the town. Those historic signs have been because of Larry and the Historical Society. He's written numerous books about Pittsfield and the residents of Pittsfield. All right!
Much better.
I need water! Yes, it is. Okay. And of course, he's been the driving force behind the establishment of this new museum, this creation of a beautiful new building. Some of you have watched it when it was just a hole in the ground, then the siding, then the cupola, and then the weather vane. And right now, I'd like to introduce Larry Berkson.
Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that kind offering. Ambushed. Ambushed. That's what happened in the spring of 1994.
Can't hear you.
You better get closer then. This is all the wind this guy's got.
He's a heckler.
Anyway, unbeknownst to me, Bob Moulton was called to Harriet Ames's house. And I was called to Harriet Ames's house. She was my first grade school teacher, so I thought I better show up. Anyway, asked her what she wanted, and she says, "You'll see when you get there." Well, Bob and I happened to arrive at the same time and asked, "What's going on?" "I don't know." Neither one of us knew. We walk in, and there's 6 or 8 people sitting in a semicircle in her living room. We can't imagine what's going on. After a few pleasantries, she said, you too are going to revive the Historical Society. Oh, I thought, I've started a business, I got a small child, I got all these things that I couldn't possibly do it. Bob chimed right in, he says, it's a tech, I got administrative thing, I can't do that. Well, after an hour, we collapsed. We said, okay, but one condition. The condition was that we had to have a building. Up to that point, it had been moved from hither, and yon. And things were getting lost, broken, stolen, you name it. All the stuff was thrown in a room on the second floor of what is now the town hall. She says, we got $10,000 to give you. There's $10,000 in the treasury. And I said, I ain't gonna buy any building. There's no way $10,000. She said, you go try to find it. So we agreed we'd go out and try to find it. Well, came across John Varney, who was a businessman here in town, and he was the head of the Grange. And I said, John, you know any place that we could buy? He said, just so happens I do. The Grange now is moving and joining with Chichester, and our building will be available. I said, well, that's great. If he could sell for $10,000? Oh, I couldn't do that. Well, time went on, and he came back sort of with hat in hand and said, I guess we'll sell it to you for $10,000. Now, I'm telling you all this simply because when we bought it, we knew it was way too small. Way, way too small. But they got things organized, they got it together under one roof. So he took the $10,000, we took the building, we did a lot of cleanup, and it was a mess, absolute mess. But we took care of it. Well, we thought that we'd have that room, that building, for about 5 or 10 years. Well, 5 years, 10 years, it went on to 15, then it went on to 20, then it went on to 25, and finally, in 2022, we have that long-awaited new building. Memory's pretty poor, I'm sorry. Well more than 350 people were involved in securing this building. Volunteers, benefactors, you name it. They were on hand and ready to go. Many of these people are named on the tablets. There's one here, and one down by the patio. I can't possibly go into thanking well over 350 people, but I'm going to single out a few of the key people. The first, excuse me. The first is my wife, Susan. I had talked about this about several years. But then health intervened, and I thought probably I couldn't lead such a project. Well, she kept saying, you can do this, you can do this. And finally I said, okay, I'll try. So if anybody's responsible for this, it's her, Susan. Second, I'd like to thank Liz Dimmick and the board of directors. They thoroughly supported the project. They let me have my head, let me help design the inside, and set up most of the displays. So if you find fault with the displays, don't criticize them, criticize me. third is Carol Richardson. Carol has stood by us steadfastly, helped us get through all the legal requirements with the town, the permits and so forth, and to her, we have a deep appreciation. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Fourth of the two main committees. First, there was the Search and Building Committee. This committee, believe it or not, met at my house every Wednesday evening for well over a year, with a couple holidays accepted. They helped plan the whole thing, they helped look for the site. We looked at 16 other sites before we finally settled on this site. And that was after getting permission from a whole bunch of people. The selectmen kindly then rented us this lot for $1 for 100 years. So I don't think any of us will see it gone unless it burns down. The second committee was the Interior Design Committee. We didn't meet as frequently, but we met quite often, setting out the layout of the whole interior. And we owe a lot to these people who spend thousands, and I mean thousands of hours working on this project. We also owe a huge debt of gratitude to several businesses who really stepped up to the plate for us. One was Davis Fuels of Epsom, who installed the heating system and gave us everything, all the materials at cost. Holmes Carpet Center completely reduced the cost of the carpet and the laying of the carpet. Kentex Corporation gave us furniture, tables, chairs, all kinds of things, all kinds of furniture. Then Mark Sargent, a surveyor, did all the surveying, and he had to do it twice because of a little strip of land out front here wasn't included, and it needed to be included, but he did it all free of charge, absolutely free of charge. Thank him very much for that. And then there were three foundations: the Community Trust, the Globe Community Trust, the Foss Family Foundation, and the Sanderson Fund. They all helped with major contributions. As for individuals, I'd like to single out 300 plus people, but I can't do it. Weather and time does not permit. So, first of all, I thank Clarence and Elizabeth Dimmick. Unfortunately, Clarence has left this earth. Florence and Robert Fries, who made substantial donations. Richard and Martha Malloy, who also gave. And John Fred Nutter, who unfortunately was looking forward to this day. He's been a supporter of this society for years. He was even on the cover of one of our annual reports. His son Gary is here today. I thank Gary and his family for the tremendous amount of money that they donated towards this building. Finally, a native, someone who has not lived here in 75 or 80 years, Martha Perkins Ramsey. She lives in Arizona, and she sent a huge check for us. And she's not been back here for many, many, many years, but we owe her a lot of gratitude as well. There's, There's also recognized Fuzzer Freeze. He did something that you're not going to think much of, but he was here dozens upon dozens upon dozens of days, setting up our supply room, our storage room downstairs. He hung how many feet of shelves did you hang? Well, it's probably a mile. I don't know. It's huge. And he arranged all of our items that need to be stored. So thank you for that. I don't know if Nick Penny is here today, but he's responsible for all the flowers and plants around the building. And Art Lara over here is Art right there. He's responsible for taking care of the lawns, laying bricks, and doing a whole host of other things. Dan Schroth did a fantastic job. Dan's here somewhere probably. On the walls, we did the rock walls around the building. Bill Provincial and Martha Malloy inventoried all the new items. Once this started looking good, people were donating a lot of items like crazy. Finally, Joel Schroth gave him his time and labor, and we owe him a lot too. Finally, there's two specific individuals that I need to single out that were the backbone of having this building. The first is Jim Parker. He came in here and did all the site work for a pittance. Probably a tenth of the real cost of this. So we owe him for all the site work and all that sort of stuff a huge debt of appreciation. And finally, Ray Weber. Ray's here somewhere. He's high. Oh, he's over here. Ray is the backbone of the building. He did all the internal layout, all the internal layout, sided it, roofed it, put the cupola on, put the weather vane on the top, did unbelievable number of things, and I think we all got to give a major hand for Ray. With that, I'm going to end my remarks. I know I probably left some people out. For this, I deeply apologize. But anyway, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Here you go. Thanks, Larry. Our next speaker is Joe McQuaid. He is the editor-at-large of the Union Leader and of the New Hampshire Sunday News. He began his career as a reporter, photographer, and eventually became publisher. Along the way, he reported from Europe, the Mideast, and Afghanistan with the New Hampshire National Guard Charlie Company. It's the only infantry unit. He also has written several books, including one on Mount Washington Cog Railway. Joe, would you like to come up, please?
Thank you very much. I've learned already that if you're going to sit in the sun in a folding chair, try not to do it on the asphalt. The lovely select woman told me, you know, you're sinking into the ground. So I expect a plaque will be put right here in honor of my appearance. I'm honored to be a small part of what is a great day for you guys. This is wonderful. From the outside, a lot of historical societies and other entities appear to people as fusty and dusty and who cares about them. I think that is largely because so many people are caught up in their own day-to-day lives. They don't appreciate how much history plays a part in their everyday life and how it can impact so much on our future. A couple of tips from my past in trying to get people out to events. I think you might concentrate on a couple of groups. One is young families who do not have a lot of scratch these days and can't go a long way away, but something like this historical society allows them to bring their family in and think a little bit outside the box. And related to that are homeschool students. Now, the parent teachers of homeschool students want to be in charge of their learning, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But they also want their children to learn how to interact with others. And we found this at the Nacky Loeb School in Manchester, of which I'm part. We have a lot of homeschoolers attend the classes there, which, by the way, are free. If you go to loebschool.org, you'll find information on them. We've had pupils as young as 12 and as old as their 80s in these classes, which teach basic communication, First Amendment law. Get that for me, please. I'm not here. My own love of history, I guess, began in where I was born, which was a town smaller than this, Candia, New Hampshire. And fortunately for me, when I was in what we called grammar school, the town was celebrating its bicentennial and also the centennial of the Civil War. Please don't do the math on that. Thank you. Thank you very much. We also had 4 or 5 still standing one-room schoolhouses. One was removed and relocated to Sturbridge Village in Massachusetts, the Smith Road Schoolhouse. My dad went to one on Patton Hill Road, and he told me once that he figured out that if by the time you were in 6th grade, you didn't know the answers to the questions, you were pretty slow because you'd heard them for the past 6 years. He was also a lover of history. I not so much. When he came into my room one spring morning and told me that I wouldn't be mowing the lawn or playing in the backyard or at the new golf course. No, I would be working at the Mount Washington Cog Railway. And he saw my jaw drop, and he said, "And you're doing that because you love trains." And I thought, that's a bit of a stretch. I liked the Lionel train set that he bought me as a kid, but he loved it so much, he put it and 20 other trains in a room with a lock on it, and I couldn't go in without his permission. But you didn't, or at least I didn't argue with my dad. Small aside here, I have 3 grandsons. The middle one is 11 years old. I don't know why he's my favorite. His name is Joey. He's autistic. He doesn't like to go to regular camp, so he spends some time doing chores for me. And I was explaining to him one day how my parents, when I was a kid, had driven me up to the mountains and left me off there to work at the railroad. He thought about that for a minute and said, "I don't know, Pop. Sounds like child abuse to me." It was not. Although when my mother and father drove me up and we got to the base station at the Cog Railway and the steam whistles are going and the smoke from the coal is up in the air, my mother suddenly remembers that her parents had been on the Cog Railway once, and there had been an accident, and there was death involved, and they had to walk down the tracks. Why she chose that particular moment to remember this story, I still don't know. But they left. I was homesick for a couple of weeks, and then I loved the place. I loved the people. I loved the owners. I loved the history of the Cog Railway. The owner of the Cog Railway, when I worked there, was a guy named Colonel Arthur S. Teague. Not to be confused with Colonel Henry Teague, who owned the railroad before Arthur and was no relation. How could you confuse those two? Henry Teague was a showman. He bought the railroad from the Boston and Maine, and he used to go south in the winter, and along the way, he would recruit college boys to come work on the railroad. And when he was driving through Georgia, he recruited a kid at Clemson University named Arthur Teague. And Arthur came north, and they struck it well, and Arthur started making improvements, and then World War II happened. And the railroad was shut down for 2 years, and Arthur went to war. He was called by his commanding general the bravest man in the U.S. Army, which is saying something. Arthur Teague landed on Utah Beach and ran into General Teddy Roosevelt, who was a commanding officer and died a few weeks later of a heart attack. My wife and I were fortunate enough to go to Normandy one time. And you know the American cemetery with the white crosses overlooking Omaha Beach? The guide knew that I was interested in Roosevelt, so he said, I'm not going in, I've been there 100 times, but I want you to go to row X, cross number 5, and tell me what you see. That's where General Teddy Roosevelt is buried with his younger brother, who had been killed in World War I. Arthur came home from the war. He won the Silver Star, the Distinguished Service Cross, the French Croix de Guerre, and other medals. And I'm thinking, when he's over slogging across Europe in heat like this and getting shot at, he must have thought how wonderful it would to be back in Mount Washington, looking up at the snow-covered summit and just loving it. He made it back, and he made a living, and he made a family at the Cog Railroad. And he bought the place from Dartmouth College, and he leased, there was a hotel on top of the mountain, the Summit House, and he leased that from the state. And in 1 year, the state said, Arthur said, the hotel needs repairs. The state said, yeah, you got to pay for it. Arthur says, the lease says, I'm the leasee, you got to pay. State said no. That was the state then, just like it is now. So they wouldn't let the hotel open. And Arthur had to refund a lot of money to people who had bought a combination ticket to go up, stay overnight at the top, come down. So it was a terrible year for him. He had a heart attack. He ended up killing himself. 2 weeks later, his youngest daughter was killed in a car accident. And about 6 weeks after that, they had the worst accident ever at the Cog Railroad, with 8 passengers killed. Had Arthur Teague been alive, it never would have happened. But things got sloppy in his absence. I had already gone back to school, so I wasn't involved in it. But it's a great bit of New Hampshire history, the Cog Railway and Arthur Teague, and I did write a book about it. I went back to work for my dad at the New Hampshire Sunday News and the Union Leader, and rose to become the publisher, as was said previously. The best job I ever had, and the one that I was good at, was as office boy. I rose to the level of my incompetence, and they kept me there. My dad was a correspondent in World War II. I think that's how he came to know Arthur Teague. And my next book, if I get it done, will be about my dad and his stories as a Chicago Daily News foreign correspondent. And I was thinking, as people were speaking here, that at the dedication at Gettysburg in 1863, the main speaker was a guy named Edward Everett Horton, and he spoke for an hour plus. Abe Lincoln got up and spoke for about 250 words. I'm not going to do as well as Abe, but I'm doing pretty good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Carol Richardson. She is a native of Pittsfield who has generously served the people of Pittsfield in numerous capacities. She is currently on her 7th year as a member of the Select Board. She also served for 7 years on the school board. I'm sure you've noticed the many brilliant gardens scattered throughout Pittsfield, established by the Beautification Committee. Carol is the current co-chair and a founding member of this committee. In addition, she was a library trustee and also a CASA volunteer. So let's welcome Carol Richardson.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this very special occasion. When Martha called to ask me to say a few words at today's celebration, I was quite surprised. I said, "Why me?" After thinking about what I would say, I decided to discuss on how this property has come full circle. As one of the founding members of the Beautification Committee, I drove by this empty lot after the Washington House had been torn down many times and thought of all the possibilities. An empty lot was not something Pittsfield needed, especially this location. I thought this lot was a perfect place for a flower garden, which would welcome visitors and residents, so I approached the selectmen to ask our committee if we could plant a flower garden. We got approval for a garden, and we went to work to design a garden that would be enjoyed by all. We planted hundreds of marigolds and spelled out the words Pittsfield Pride. It was a huge undertaking, and we put hours into trimming and watering the garden that year. The following year, we raised money to purchase a flagpole, and the following year, Dan Schropp built a beautiful stone wall around the garden area. We continued to plant various garden arrangements with the expertise provided by Nick Penny throughout the years. Fast forward, I had read and followed the Historical Society's plight to find property to build a new facility to house their huge collection of Pittsfield historical items. The committee had looked at least 22 sites around Pittsfield and found a dead end at each site for one reason or another. There was not much town property available, but as chairman of the Beautification Committee, I was approached by Mr. Berkson to see if the Beautification Committee would give up our garden at the Washington House lot, since it appeared that this site could accommodate the proposed Historical Society building that had been in the planning stages for years. I assured Mr. Berkson I would talk with the Beautification Committee members to get their input. I was also a member of the Select Board and approached those members to see if they would agree to donate this town property to the Historical Society. After much discussion and yes, some pushback, the selectmen finally agreed that this would be an option, but only if I could convince the Beautification Committee to give up their garden. Following much back and forth, we finally all agreed that this would be a great use for this piece of property, and the property was donated to the Historical Society for $1. The adjoining lot was also donated to accommodate parking. From the beginning, I have witnessed the hard work of the Historical Society committees and their commitment to detail. You have been thoughtful in making sure all phases of the project were not disruptive to the residents in this part of town. As a lifelong volunteer, I know how difficult it is to get dedicated volunteers and funds to bring this beautiful building to life. But I'm most impressed on all of the responsible parties came to see that this building will forever house artifacts for generations to come. Pittsfield is indeed a wonderful community made up of talented, caring individuals working together. We have come full circle, and I continue to see so many positive things for Pittsfield's future. Congratulations, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this memorable occasion.
Thank you, everybody. I also want to thank our guest speakers, Carol and Joe. I have a plaque here which shows that a commemorative brick will be placed in our patio in honor of those two individuals. Larry, I also have a small thank you for you for all of your hard work and dedication in getting this building built. It has been a tremendous endeavor for a lot of people in this area. Now, it is my honor to cut the ribbon to this building and to invite you all to come in. Now, don't rush the doors because we have to move the speakers. And also in the back corner there will be refreshments. We have a lot of refreshments. There's water, lemonade, goodies. A lot of people have donated time and effort to get it done. with me.
The golden she is, right?
Welcome, everybody. Wait a minute and please join us.